Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here on the Parker Love Sports YouTube channel. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to spend them here with me. My name is Parker, and in today's video, we're going over the top 10 offensive tackles, or I guess my top 10 offensive tackles for the 2024 NFL Draft, which is occurring in, I'd say, just over a week, just over 2 weeks. I think it's just over a week, because I believe on Thursday it will be officially a week from the draft. But in today's video, we're going over my top 10 offensive tackles, and this is the daily upload series where leading up to the draft, we're going over my top 10 players at every single position. So yeah, we started with quarterbacks and we went to running backs and we did receivers. We were supposed to do tight ends yesterday, but we decided to take a little detour, do interior offensive linemen, and today is offensive tackles. Tomorrow will be tight ends, and then we're going to go interior defensive linemen, edge rushers, linebackers, corners, safeties, my top 20 players, and then 2 final mock drafts before the NFL draft gets here. And I'm going to try and sprinkle in a couple more uploads because I promised daily, a couple daily, or not daily, but I promised a couple double uploads, and I haven't done that yet. But I do have a mock draft completed that I just need to record, and I have some other videos that I do want to record before the NFL draft occurs. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get into my top 10 offensive tackles in the 2024 NFL draft. But as always, first things first, I do have to remind you that Jesus is King, and I just pray that you give your life to him, as he has got a plan and a purpose for you. And I truly hope that you accept Jesus with your whole heart as your Lord and Savior, and believe with your whole heart that he lived the perfect life, sacrificed himself on a cross, died, and was resurrected from the dead 3 days later, defying death. And if you have your faith in him, then you'll go to heaven. It's that simple and it's that easy. It's not how many times we go to church. It's not through how many times we do all these good works. And yes, those things are good, and we should want to do that once we're saved. But the sole thing that saves us is the work of Jesus and the work that he did. None of our works get us to heaven. It's solely through Jesus. And this is an important message to me to share as a Christian. A lot of people aren't going to like that I'm sharing this message, but to me, it is very, very important. And so yeah, I'm going to continue to share it at the beginning of every single one of my videos. And now with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump in to my top 10 offensive tackles in the 2024 NFL Draft. My number 10 tackle is Kieran Amagaji. Now, Kieran was one of those guys when I was doing mock drafts a little while ago, I'd say 2-3 months ago, heck, even later in the season. He was a guy you could look to get at the 5th round because he did play at Yale. Yale isn't a football powerhouse, but now he started to rise up, and I honestly think at the latest, Kieran will be a 3rd round pick. He could even go in the late to mid 2nd round, in my opinion. Now, Kieran's build, he is a 6'5", 323-pound tackle. His home state is from Illinois. He is from Illinois. I kind of phrased it weird, but Kieran has an excellent build and arm length. His arm length is 36 1/8 inches, which makes him a great tackle because that's a solid arm size, and his arm length ensures that he will most likely be a tackle in the NFL. Now, who knows? I'm not a pro, I'm not a professional, I'm not a scout, and speaking of that, this ranking and these traits are coming from things that I've read, specifically NFL Draft Buzz online, because I'm not a professional scout, but I do my own scouting. And offensive line is just where I struggle. I cannot identify offensive line to save my life. Yeah, I struggle. So this is all from what I've read, but I'm not a professional. And so anyway, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. But I'm also not a professional because I don't know if a team sees him. Maybe he could play a different spot on the offensive line, but I see him as a tackle, and the arm length most likely ensures that he will be a tackle in the NFL. Now, Amagaji is an elite pass blocker and a great run blocker. He's great in both of those areas. Now, he does excel more as a pass blocker, which is kind of a trend for this class, but he is also a great run blocker. He explodes off the line of scrimmage into run blocking, and he also explodes and gets that quick drop well in pass protection. He is a very flexible offensive tackle who has great balance when dropping into pass protection. And so Kieran Amagaji is my number 10 offensive tackle in this year's class. My number 9 offensive tackle is going to be Jordan Morgan, the offensive tackle out of Arizona. Morgan is 6'5", 311 pounds, and is 22 years old. Morgan is a great athlete and a fluid mover who easily is able to drop back into that pass protection. Very quick, very fluid with his feet. He explodes off the line of scrimmage and engages with his defender when he is run blocking. And he is an elite pass blocker. Like I keep saying, this is going to be a trend in this draft class. And he's a great run blocker, but he excels at he excels at pass blocking. Great at run blocking, but both areas could use a little bit improvement, obviously, at the next level, because these are young guys, college kids who are going to be adjusting to the NFL and still need to develop and still need to get better. And everyone can get better. Everyone. Myself, yourself, everyone, the prospects coming in, everyone can get better. No one's perfect. So, yeah. But another thing, and I guess the biggest concern that I have with Jordan Morgan, and a lot of, not a lot of concerns that I saw, but it was mentioned and it was brought up. He doesn't have the longest arms. He has 32 and 7/8 inch arms, and that can be a problem in the NFL. But there have been some tackles who arm length doesn't really matter. I mean, you look at Rashawn Slater, and he is one of the best tackles in football for the Chargers. But then you also look at guys like Peter Skoronski, who a lot of people thought could play offensive tackle, but because of the shorter arm length, a lot of people thought he would move to guard. And if I remember correctly, Peter Skoronski did move into guard. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, Peter Skoronski, I believe, did move to guard for the Titans. And then if you look at Elijah Vera Tucker, a few years back in 2021, who's now with the Jets, I believe he was a tackle coming out of USC, but the Jets are playing him at guard. So, Jordan Morgan could very well be a tackle in the NFL because for some tackles, like I mentioned with Rashawn Slater, the arm length doesn't matter. But other tackles, it can matter. And so we'll just have to see how it plays out. But that is the one concern that I do have with Jordan Morgan, who is my number 9 offensive tackle in this year's class. Moving on to my number 8 tackle in this year's class, it is going to be Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma has had some really good tackles these past few drafts. Obviously, Tyler Guyton this year. Last year, it was Anton Harrison and Wanya Morris, but that's neither here nor there. Tyler Guyton possesses a big frame at the offensive tackle position, as you can see by the measurables on screen. Guyton is 6'7", 328 pounds, and is 22 years old. Guyton is a great athlete, and he has nimble and quick feet when dropping back into his pass protection. He also explodes off of the line of scrimmage and uses his strength to overpower defenders, which in turn creates running lanes and creates gaps for obviously his running back to get through and pick up yardage down the field. I'm kind of over explaining things. That's what I do, and I'm trying to get better at it, but it's a struggle for me. And then he's also an excellent pass blocker, and he's a sufficient run blocker. Like I mentioned over and over, and I'm probably going to mention more in this video, a lot of this tackle class, at least these top 10 guys that I have, are really good in pass protection. And then run blocking, some are good, some are great. There's very few who are elite. I would say Guyton, from what I've read, is a sufficient run blocker. Maybe not the greatest, not the worst, but definitely an area of improvement when he gets to the NFL. But Guyton is my number 8 offensive tackle. And moving on to my number 7 offensive tackle is going to be Kingsley Suamataia. And yeah, it's a very tough name to pronounce and learn to pronounce. I've been trying to practice pronouncing it correctly for the past few minutes and past however long it's been since I looked up the pronunciation of his name, but it's Suamataia, Kingsley Suamataia. And the first thing I want to tell you about Kingsley Suamataia before we get into the measurables is he is actually cousins with Lions offensive tackle Penei Sewell. Now, a few years ago, back in 2021, Penei Sewell was this generational tackle prospect coming into the NFL, and he has lived up to those expectations. I'm not expecting Suamataia to necessarily be that, but when he trains with his cousin, I think that he can pick some stuff up and he can learn, and he can be a pretty solid offensive tackle in the NFL. Now, Suamataia's frame is 6'6", 324 pounds, and is only 21 years old coming into this draft. And that's crazy to me because this is going to be a little bit of a sidebar. But I love the draft, and I've been watching it for years and decided to start covering it these past few years. And it's crazy because all these guys have typically been older than me, but seeing someone like Kingsley Suamataia, who's 21 years old, he is younger than me. And it's just crazy to think about. It's crazy to think about. But moving on, Suamataia is an elite pass blocker and a sufficient run blocker. Like I've mentioned before, he is a great pass blocker, but can improve as a run blocker. He possesses a well-balanced frame, and he has decent arm length at 34 1/4 inches arms. He uses his big frame to seal off the edge from those edge rushers, and he's a versatile player who can play left or right tackle. Now, I would imagine for a majority of the teams, he would play as the right tackle, so he's not the blind side tackle for the quarterback. He very well could be, if that's how they envision him and that's how they see him. But I feel like a lot of teams have their left tackle, their blindside protector set in place. Now, of course, if it's the Dolphins, then they would be the right tackle as a blindside, so he'd most likely play the left tackle, or heck, even the team that maybe drafts Michael Penix Jr. That could be the scenario, but he does have the versatility to play as a left or a right tackle, and obviously as that blindside protector if a team needs that. Now, where was I? Yeah, versatile player, cousins with Penei Sewell, elite pass blocker, sufficient run blocker. That's all I got on Suamataia, and I'm just saying his name a bunch so I can practice it, and when he's inevitably drafted in a few weeks, I guess just over a week, I can get the pronunciation right. But yeah, Suamataia is my number 7 tackle in this year's class. My number 6 offensive tackle in this year's class is Troy Fautanu, offensive tackle out of Washington. Now, the other Washington tackle in Roger Rosengarten will be drafted this year. Now, I went a little bit more into depth of Roger Rosengarten in a clip, but I decided to cut that out. All I'm going to say is I was a backup quarterback in high school, and my high school played against Roger Rosengarten. So, yeah, we played him in high school. That's all I'm going to say. He is a Colorado kid. I feel like a lot of people know that. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that my high school at some point played his high school team. So, yeah, I think that's something cool. Not giving away too much to dox myself, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. As for Fautanu, or actually, I think I said Fautanu. I played Rosengarten. I played my high school at one point played Roger Rosengarten, not Troy Fautanu, so I can't remember if I mixed that up, and if I did, I'm sorry. I used to be this perfectionist who would cut that out and restart if I got it wrong, but I'm working to not do that because no one's perfect. So, yeah, but Rosengarten, my high school played, but we're talking about Troy Fautanu here. Fautanu stands at 6'4", 317 pounds, and is 23 years old. Now, he is one of the few players that is actually older than me right now. I'm 22 right now, and I turn 23 later this year. But Fautanu is an elite pass blocker and a good run blocker. As I mentioned previously, this should come as no shock. Fautanu is an athletic tackle who ran a 5.01 40-yard dash, had a 32.5 vertical jump, and 32.5 inches vertical jump, and had a 113-inch broad jump. He has decent arms at 34.5 inches. Not the biggest arms, not the shortest arms. I say it's kind of in between, maybe on the shorter arm side, but he also has 9.5-inch hands, and his wingspan is about 81 inches. But yeah, 34 Don't have a whole lot here on Fautanu, but he is my number 6 offensive tackle in this year's class. Moving on to my number 5 offensive tackle, that is going to be Amarius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Now, I'm sure you can see on the screen, he is an absolutely massive tackle at 6'7", 340 pounds. He is 21 years old. Now, Mims is great at both run and pass blocking. I would say he's better in pass blocking. Now, he's not elite at either. Can definitely become elite at these, or I guess at one of these, not one of, I was going to say positions, but he could become elite at both run and pass blocking. We'll have to see. But at this present moment, I would say he's not elite at either. But he's good, not good, I would say great at both run and pass blocking. He has a great length to him. He's got 11 and a half. He has 11 and a quarter inch hands. He has 36 and 1/8 inch arms, and he has about an 86-inch wingspan. He's a very athletic tackle who ran a 5.07 40-yard dash. I can't remember if that was at the combine or if that was at his pro day, because I like the combine numbers better because they're more official, and colleges maybe not so official, letting some things slide to help their players get a better draft stock. I'm not saying they obviously do that unintentional, or I'm not saying they do that necessarily intentionally, but you know, there's things that can happen. So I just trust the combine numbers over the pro day numbers. But I can't remember if he ran at the combine or not. But Mims is a very explosive and powerful athlete, capable of open up running lanes. Obviously, as a run blocker, can make his way up to the second level, uses his strength to essentially, I guess, move the defender and create those running lanes. But Amarius Mims is my number 5 offensive tackle in this year's class. Just had to check that we were re-recording because I had to restart the segment. But my number 4 offensive tackle is going to be J.C. Latham out of Alabama. He stands at 6'6", 359 pounds, and is 21 years old out of Alabama. I believe the offensive tackle out of Alabama was Tyler Steen last year, I believe. But I'm not 100% sure. There's a bunch of prospects that sometimes get mixed together, so it can be a little bit difficult and challenging. But J.C. Latham is an elite pass and run blocker. He is elite in both of those areas. He has a great combination of strength, and then obviously he uses his size at 6'6", 359 pounds, and he uses his he just has a great combination of strength and length. I kind of misread what I typed down in my notes, but yeah, he's a great combination of strength and then obviously his size. Now, J.C. Latham uses his quick feet and pass protection to get into position and counter edge rushers. Obviously, you know, you got to drop back and kind of do this little shuffle. I can't really explain it, but you got to get into position. And he has got quick feet to get back there quickly and counter those edge rushers, specifically the speed rushers. And going more into that, he's got great lateral movement to gain the depth into his pass protection drops. Got the speed, athleticism, agility. J.C. Latham is one of the most athletic tackles. I won't say most athletic tackles, but he is an athletic tackle in this year's draft. Now, coming in at my number 3 tackle position, this is going to be Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. Now, Fuaga stands at 6'6", 334 pounds, and his hometown is in Washington. Now, unlike the other tackles in this year's draft, Fuaga is an elite run blocker. That's what he excels at, is run blocking. So, outside, I would say, of Joe Alt, if you need a run-blocking offensive tackle, if you're working on a run-heavy offense, Talise Fuaga is your guy. But yeah, like I mentioned, he's an elite run blocker, and he might be the best in the class. It's between him and Joe Alt, in my opinion, for who is the best run blocker in the class. But he's also a great pass blocker as well. But unlike most of the other tackles in this class, Fuaga excels as a run blocker. He overpowers defenders and controls them on the line of scrimmage in running plays by using his size and strength combo. Again, 6'6", 334 pounds. He's a great athlete who had. He's a great athlete who has position versatility. He can play across the line. I would say he could play as a left or right tackle. If you need to kick him into guard, I think he could do that as well. And same thing with NFL Draft Buzz. They said he's got great versatility, and I think he could. But in my opinion, I would just play Fuaga as a left or right tackle, as I think he's got the talent to do so. He was also very, like I mentioned, I was going to say he's very athletic, but I mentioned that. And as I mentioned, because he's a great athlete, here is what I guess his results were. Once again, I can't remember if this was at the Combine or the Pro Day, but he ran a 5.13 40-yard dash, had a 32-inch vertical jump, and a 111-inch broad jump. He plays at a good pad level, again, not necessarily standing straight up to lose leverage, but he plays at a good pad level, gets down, and engages with the defender, and because of that, he uses his leverage to dominate the defenders on the offensive, or I guess not the offensive line, but the defensive line. He uses his leverage to do so. But yeah, Fuaga is my number 3 offensive tackle in this year's class. Moving on to my number 2, that is going to be Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle out of Penn State. And for the longest time, Fashanu was my number 1 offensive tackle in this class. Going into the Combine, he was still my number 1 tackle. Going back, if you looked at last season, there was the potential that Fashanu would declare for the draft in last year's draft. Probably would have been the number 1 tackle off the board if he did so. Goes back for his second year at Penn State. And to me, he's still the second best tackle. Was my number 1 tackle pretty much until the end. Well, I guess not pretty much, but until the Combine, until after the Combine. But Olu Fashanu, I can't remember if I said Fuaga because we were just talking about Talise Fuaga. But Fashanu is a very talented offensive tackle. He stands at 6'6", 317 pounds, and is 21 years old. Now, Fashanu is an elite pass blocker and a great run blocker. So, once again, another offensive tackle who excels as a pass blocker, but he also is very, very good in the run game as a run blocker. So, he can do both. Maybe needs to develop a little bit more in the run blocking aspects to balance his game out as a whole. But he's elite in pass blocking, great as run blocker, as I mentioned before. He has quick and nimble feet to get to his drop in pass protection and get to his position quickly. In run blocking, Fashanu quickly finishes his initial block before making his way to the second level. Of course, you have to engage with the first level, the defensive linemen, the edge rushers. You have to block them, and then eventually you have to get up to the second level in run blocking, of course, to block the linebackers, the safeties, sometimes the corners, if they're coming in through the box. But most of the time it's safeties and linebackers, and of course that's only on run plays because you can't have the illegal man downfield. I'm yapping, I'm jabbering, you already know that. But he explodes off the line of scrimmage, and he uses his build, which is his size, his strength, everything. He uses that. Oh my goodness, I kind of lost where I am. But yeah, he explodes off the line of scrimmage and uses his strength and build to open up running lanes. He's also a very solid athlete. He ran a 5.11, a 5.11, I guess if you want to call it, too. That was his 40 time. He had a 32-inch vertical and 109-inch broad jump. He does have shorter arms, I would say, in this class at 34 inches, and his hands are 8.5 inches. But like I mentioned earlier, that's not necessarily an indication that he's going to be a bad offensive tackle, and I don't think he is. I think he will be a very good and a very solid offensive tackle. Maybe he can even become one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. But it can be a cause for concern, so I just thought I would mention it. And then same thing that I mentioned earlier as well with another offensive tackle is he's still developing. He hasn't reached his full potential. There's lots of areas that he can improve, like us all. And so Fashanu is not a finished product. And in my opinion, he's not my number 1 tackle anymore, but he could still by far and away be the best tackle to come from this entire draft class. But Fashanu number as is at number 2, and at my number 1 position for offensive tackle in this year's draft, it should be a surprise to no one that it is Joe Alt. Yeah. First things first, you got to look at his size. He is 6'7", 322 pounds, and is 21 years old. You look at the size, oh my goodness, you just look at everything, his build, his athleticism combined together. It is crazy. Now, the first thing that I want to mention is he is the best run and pass blocker in this entire draft. I know I mentioned Talise Fuaga could be the best run blocker in this draft. I still think it is Joe Alt, as he is elite in both of those areas. So in my opinion, I think he is the best run and pass blocker in this draft. He has the prototypical blindside offensive tackle build. He's going to be that guy. He will be a franchise quarterback's blindside protector. He will be the left tackle if you need him to. But if a team already has an established left tackle, potentially maybe like the Chargers, Joe Alt could be the right tackle. And that would be a crazy offensive tackle combination if they had Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. I'm not saying that will happen. I was just using the Chargers for an example, but he will be a blindside protector for any quarterback, probably a franchise quarterback, because I feel like a team drafting, not necessarily, but I do think that he will be the blindside protector for a team. There's very few situations that Alt would walk in and not be the blindside protector for a quarterback in the NFL. He's a great athlete who has a quick first step, a quick burst. He uses his, oh my goodness, sorry, I am very tired right now, so I'm kind of, I always record these late. I need to record these earlier, but Joe Alt is a great athlete who has a quick burst and first step, and he's able to drop into pass protection, mirroring his opponent, so he can shadow them, and he can drop back quickly if he needs to. He matches their speed to seal off that edge. He plays at a great pad level, like we mentioned earlier, and he uses his lever, I guess we mentioned earlier with another prospect, and he uses his leverage and size to dominate his competition. Going to play low, not going to stand up, because that's going to give you not the leverage if you just stand straight up. You got to explode out at a solid pad level, engage, and then use that leverage to dominate your defender. And so Joe Alt does that. He's a strong anchor at the tackle position, an elite pass blocker, an elite run blocker. Not only the best offensive tackle in this class, but I would say the best offensive lineman. If you look at interior lineman and offensive tackle, I feel like that's not a shock to anyone, but I'd put Joe Alt at the very top of all offensive linemen if they were all categorized as one. If it was centers, guards, and tackles, and it was one list that you were watching, and this was like my top 10 offensive lineman list, Alt would still be the number 1. But that is going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed. I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as the support is greatly appreciated. This was kind of one that I struggled to make because I don't know a whole lot about evaluating offensive linemen, so I had to use other people's words. And I still use other people's words because I'm not an elite scout. I'm not a professional scout, so I still read and I still take a lot of other people's opinions into account because I'm still trying to grow and get more information as a potential scout and whatnot. But yeah, I just don't know a whole lot about evaluating offensive linemen, so kind of using some other people's, I was reading other people's, so it was kind of hard to just get through. I'm hoping to get back to better with the tight ends. That didn't make any sense, but yeah, I'm just going to end it here before I say something stupid, make other incorrect grammar mistakes like I just did there. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.